Story 1, Shadows of Collapse, Extended Edition. The first thing to die was the noise. Traffic, talking, televisions, gone like someone pulled the plug on the world. We didn't notice at first. We told ourselves it was temporary, a blip. But the quiet had teeth. A month before the crash, headlines read like riddles. A week before, ATMs blinked out of service. A day before, the markets froze. By morning, money stopped meaning anything. That's the day the counting ended and surviving began. Part 1. The Great Unraveling. My name is Mara. I worked mornings at a small credit union with a leaky ceiling and an espresso machine that hissed like a tired cat. 2 kids, 1 baseball glove, a houseplant that never stopped trying. The day the system buckled, our screens turned to glass. No numbers, just our faces. There was a silence I won't forget. The sound of a whole room realizing the floor wasn't real. The rush came in waves, first the cautious, then the frantic, then the angry. Banks locked their doors, plazas emptied, payroll stopped, grocers rationed, then closed, pharmacies were looted, signs went from limit to sorry out in hours. At home, my son Dylan looked at me like I had the answers. My daughter June asked if her birthday party was still on. I told them the only truth I could carry. Today we learned to make bread. Government channels crackled with comfort words, stability measures, temporary disruption like stay calm. We tried. By day 4, police patrols became checkpoints. New rules, new curfew, new warnings. Stay off the streets after sundown. Neighbors formed circles in cul-de-sacs, swapping batteries for oats, medicine for fuel. I traded a sweater for 2 water filters and learned the first law of collapse. Every cupboard is a conversation. We drew chalk grids in the street for chores and watched turns. The rain washed them away. That same night I learned the second law. Rain makes thieves brave. They were kids mostly, thin, fast, hungry. We let them take the last store bread and called it mercy. Mercy emptied our pantry. By week 2, the word job felt antique like cassette. People walked around in old uniforms, suits, scrubs, safety vests, like ghosts who hadn't been told. Rumors ran ahead of facts. Foreign attack, insider sabotage, a reset. One rumor had names and dates and a calm tone like a script. It said the collapse was only the first move. It said something else was coming. At the farmer's market, half the stalls were empty. A stranger sold seed packets like tarot cards, tomatoes, beans, kale. The Holy Trinity. I traded 2 gallons of water and my last granola bars for seeds and a leaflet. Start today, survive winter. On the back, when power breaks, skill is currency. That night I planted by headlamp in the yard where sprinklers used to brag. The soil read like a language I didn't know. I wrote in it anyway. Days blurred. Doors stayed locked. Small talk died. We stopped borrowing sugar. We stopped trusting. One evening, shouting 2 streets over, by the time I reached the corner, flames clawed the sky. A family's home burned. No hoses, no 9/11, just silent faces, each thinking better theirs than mine. That's when I knew the city itself was sick, not with fever, with fear. Part 2. The Plague of Control. 3 weeks later, the sickness arrived, not on TV, but on flyers taped to stop signs. A cough, a fever, then blue spots. Hospitals put up tents, then fences, then guards. They called it E5. It started like flu. In some, it snapped into something worse. People became restless, then violent for a few hours, then dropped into sleep like they'd been unplugged. The city called it Phase B. The news called it an acute behavioral event. Everyone else called it the reason to double lock the door. Drones buzzed over highways and sprayed a shimmering mist. The mayor said it was disinfectant. The radio said it was control. I said nothing, but a knot settled under my ribs and stayed there. One morning, June woke coughing. My hands shook. Her forehead was cool, thank God, but for 3 days I barely breathed. Every sneeze felt like a coin toss with our future on it. The swings in the park hung still. The chains squeaked in the wind for nobody. Ration trucks stopped coming. We packed what we could carry. The rest became someone else's story. We headed north to a place people whispered about, 4 Pines, where the fences were made of neighbors, not wire. We kept off highways, slipping through service roads and dry riverbeds. At a half-collapsed rest stop, we met a man in a faded guard jacket with a scar shaped like a question mark. He called himself Rook. He showed us how to carry water in clothes, how to find north by moss, how to whistle through a reed without a sound. At dusk, a convoy rolled past without headlights, dark trucks humming like a hive. Rook pulled us into a ditch. "Contractors," he whispered. "Not military. Military wears its flag. Contractors wear silence." 4 Pines wasn't a town. It was a decision. 10 families, then 20, then more. We parked cars bumper to make a perimeter. At the gate, a woman asked what we could do. I said, "Numbers, and I'm learning seeds." She nodded. "Numbers ration, seeds feed." Welcome raised beds covered an old baseball diamond. A gravity line ran down from a hill spring. Kids learned archery where lemonade once sold. That night, Sawyer, the gray-haired man who had held the gate when the first family came, told us the story. We made 2 mistakes. First, thinking help was coming. Second, thinking help was the point. We help us, or we don't make it. Rumors wore suits and shook hands. Engineered virus, quiet evacuations, pre-crash trades. I wanted to dismiss it all, but I remembered black trucks and careful drones and filed the rumors under things to fear later. Part 3. Survival in the Ashes. Survival wasn't a montage, it was work followed by more work. 4 Pines kept 3 rules: pay your share, take only what you need, no gods but the morning. Every day starts at 0. I hauled water at dawn, rationed at noon, watched the ham radio at dusk. We stitched shirts from sacks, turned pallets into beds, rebuilt a radio from 2 dead ones. Skill became status, stories became medicine. Once a week we held a barter, soap for salt, wire for wool. I brought filters and a jar of honey, returned with vinegar and brittle medical books that weighed more than they looked. Winter came early and mean. We burned pallets and learned smoke. We lost 2 to the fever that eats the lungs from the inside out. We buried them at the tree line. The dirt closed with a dull sound like a door that wouldn't open again. June knitted Dylan a scarf from old shirts. Rook taught kids to snare rabbits and walk without making birds cry out. On the coldest nights, we read soft stories from before, the kind that hurt less. One night the radio crackled. 3 rivers burned. Reclamation, they're calling it. Not military. Repeat, not military. We looked at Rook. He looked at the ridge. The next morning we hid what we couldn't move and moved what we couldn't hide. We cached jars in holes labeled with sticks only we understood. We lined a root cellar with buckets and chalked a note on the door. Open only after a fight with yourself. Hunger sharpened everything. It made neighbors honest and strangers dangerous. Once in the deep cold, we found boot prints circling the outer fence. The prints stopped under a pine and turned into nothing. Rook said, "They watched us. They'll be back." We doubled the watch. We kept our lamps low. We learned a new sound, the soft, wrong click of a gate latch tested by a stranger in the dark. Part 4. The Reckoning. They came at noon under a white sky, 4 vehicles in a neat line, uniforms almost military, almost. No flags, polite smiles, polite rifles. "We're here to help," the leader said. "We're consolidating supplies for regional management." "Central authorities will redistribute," Sawyer said. "We don't have central authorities. We have neighbors." The leader read from a tablet, though no towers worked. "This can't be everything." "Then your list is wrong," I said. The silence stretched until the radio on his shoulder barked. "Cascade Station breached." Unknowns. Fire in the data room. Pull teams to perimeter. His jaw went flat. "Rapid. We'll be back." Dust swallowed them. That night, a woman's voice came through the ham, steady and close. "This is Psalms. You are not alone. We have evidence the collapse and pathogen were engineered. Names, dates, supply chains. The pattern is the proof. If they shut one door, we open 12 windows." I keyed the mic. 4 Pines copies. "They'll come for your food first," Psalm said, "then your children's future. Don't wait for perfect conditions to resist. Join when you can. Stand where you are when you must." We made rotations, watch and work, teach and tend. We hung mirrors on the ridge to throw false glints. Rook taught quiet movement and loud purpose. We weren't an army. We were kitchen knives and conviction, hammer handles and hope. But hope is a tool that never runs out of battery. On the generator, I spoke into the mic. "To anyone listening, this is 4 Pines. We're not special or chosen, we're practicing. If you're alone, you don't have to stay that way. Find 12 people. Eat together. Work together. Tell the truth out loud. Hide what must be hidden. Share what must be shared. Power doesn't disappear, it changes hands. We want hands like ours on the levers. The world might belong to the ones who planned it. Tomorrow belongs to the ones who show up." The night didn't end, but it blinked. Part 5. The Night Visitors. The first time they tested us, they came quiet. 3 figures at the fence, faces wrapped, blades catching moonlight. They moved like men who had practiced. We let them climb. We let them reach the inner path. Then Sawyer hit the flood with a car battery and 2 stolen streetlights, and Rook stepped out with a 12-gauge that sounded older than any of us. The men ran. We didn't chase. We learned to leave a can on the fence post. If it was on the ground at dawn, someone had walked our lines. After that, we heard about a group on the highway called the Night Haulers. They drove box trucks with the logos sprayed out and collected payments from camps that couldn't say no. They didn't laugh. They didn't brag. They just packed and left. One morning, we found their tire tracks pressed into the clay near the creek in a cigarette butt with no smell left in it. The message was simple. We know you're here. Part 6. Inside 4 Pines. Not every danger was outside. Hunger makes tempers thin. A father hoarded extra rations for his kid and lied about it. We caught him when Sawyer's ledger didn't match my numbers. We didn't throw him out. We put him on water duty, wet, cold, endless, and assigned his child to the greenhouse where a dozen eyes could watch. He cried once when he thought no one could see. We pretended we didn't. He brought his ledger into balance and stayed. A teenager on watch fell asleep. He woke to a shadow at the fence and a rope hooked over the post. He rang the bell so hard he hurt his hands. We weren't kind that morning. We made him walk the outer lines alone at noon while crows tracked him like judges. He stayed awake after that. Fear can teach. So can forgiveness. Part 7. The Whistle Road. If you traveled after dark, you used the Whistle Road. 2 short whistles meant friend. 1 long meant stop where you are. 3 fast meant run. We cut the code into a scrap of metal and nailed it to the old stop sign. One night a child whistled wrong, 3 fast for run, because he thought it was a game. 20 grown people grabbed their kids and packs and hid in root cellars until dawn. In the morning, the boy's mother held him and shook and apologized to everyone. We took the sign down, burned it, and taught the code by voice only. Travelers brought stories worse than ours. A church gym locked from the outside during a Phase B flare. The windows showed handprints for days. A caravan stopped by safety officers who wore no badges and took only the young people for screening. A family returned from temporary relocation to find their house tagged quarantine and everything inside gone. Sanitation, the tag said. Do not enter. The smell of bleach lingered. The smell of theft lasted longer. Part 8. The Reclamation Night. They didn't knock the night they truly came back. Engines off, doors quiet. We woke because the dogs did. 1 bark, then none. Rook whispered, they cut the throats. In the dark we heard boots and the snap of our outer wire. A voice called out, cheerful, inventory check. Hands visible. No uniforms, just gray jackets and neat haircuts. The polite ones are the worst. We answered from cover. Leave and live. The man laughed. You'll run out of tins before we run out of men. He wasn't wrong, but he was in a bowl. We lit the far slope with flares. Every shooter knows not to stand under red light. They ran again. We let them. A truck clipped a stump, rolled and bled oil like a wounded animal. We didn't touch it. We knew they'd come for it at dawn. They did, fast and nervous, and left a trail of oil for a mile. Rook said, we won't follow it. Someone else will. Part 9. The Winter of Blue Spots. The blue spots came back hard with the snow. Faces flushed, tempers snapped, doors slammed too loud. We learned early signs, glassy eyes, hands that couldn't hold still, the way a person's voice got thin around the edges. We set up a shade tent away from the main fire. If Phase B hit, you went there with a blanket and water and 2 people watching from the trees. Not jail, not kindness either. Something in between. Some nights 3 blankets lay in the shade tent like bodies. We counted breaths and waited for the switch to flip. It always did. People woke with dry tongues and stuck tears and didn't remember what they had thrown or who they had called a thief. We made a rule. No one gets judged for what the fever does with their mouth. We still avoided them for a day just in case. Part X. Psalms List. Psalm sent a file over the ham, chopped audio, scrambled names, places I didn't know. She read a list of companies that sold security services and medical logistics and continuity packages. She named a warehouse where bottled water arrived 2 months before the crash and a private airfield where 4 jets took off the night the markets froze. They plan to own your tomorrow, she said. They forgot you still own your hands. The next day, the station broadcasting Psalms went dead. A week later, it came back on a different frequency, and a different voice said the same words, slower, like teaching children to read. Part 11. The Long Scare. June went pale and hot and quiet. The blue spots never came, but the fever did, and I counted breaths with my wrists pressed to her chest. Rook boiled water and pretended not to pray. Sawyer sat by the door with a ledger he didn't write in. Dylan held the scarf his sister had made and wouldn't look at me. On the third night, June whispered, "I'm here." On the fourth, she wanted bread. On the fifth, she asked if the birds were back. They were. I cried into the bread and told her it was just the steam. Part 12. The Decision. Spring tried. Shoots poked through soil that remembered our hands. The night haulers hit a camp downriver and took 4 teenagers for work detail. They left a note in neat black letters. Cooperation equals safety. The parents howled without sound. We argued late around the fire. Fight, hide, beg, join. Sawyer drew 2 circles in the dirt, us and them. "We can't win at their game," he said. "We make a new one." We didn't vote for war. We voted for 1,000 small refusals. We voted for friction. We moved stores at night. We made fake ledgers and real caches. We placed a red bucket on the fence post when the road was safe, a blue one when it wasn't. The buckets changed more than the map did. People watched buckets, not paper. Part 13. The Return. They did return months later with fresh uniforms, clean boots, and a nicer speech. A corridor for your safety, a council for your voices, a registry for your needs, beds, meals, medicine. The man smiled with all his teeth. Temporary. We looked at each other and at our kids' thin shoulders and at the beans lined up like soldiers on a shelf. "We've built our own council," I said. "We've got our own registry. We've got our own beds." The man wrote non-compliant on his form and smiled again. "We'll note your concerns." They took notes. We took turns. Part 14. After. The checkpoints emptied. The vans thinned. The drones flew lower and less often. The sickness didn't leave, but it learned to move around us. We learned to live around it. The city never announced an end. It just faded like a storm you stopped naming. Bills returned, shy at first, then bold. Some people went back. Some people couldn't. Most of us found a middle. 4 pines held. The gate sagged. The beans kept marching. The water line gurgled in summer and froze in winter, and we kicked ice out of the spigot with our boots. The kids grew stringy and fast and smart about birds. The dogs had puppies, and we put bells on them so we'd know if someone cut their throats again. No one did. When people asked later what saved us, we didn't say guns or luck or a perfect plan. We said neighbors, routines, small, honest work, and refusing to hand the keys of our lives to anyone who smiled while they took them. We kept the deed to nothing because nothing had a deed anymore. We kept a map on butcher paper and changed it when the world did. We kept a radio warm. We kept showing up. The world might belong to the ones who planned it. Tomorrow still belongs to the ones who wake up and get in line for water at dawn. If you're listening, you're alive. If you're alone, you don't have to stay that way. Find 12 people, eat together, work together, whisper if you must, shout if you can, and never leave the beans in one place. The night won't end, but if enough of us stand up in it, the night will blink. Story 2. The Lockout. It started with a simple problem. Their money didn't work anymore. Cole tried to buy gas, declined. He tried credit, declined again. Inside the station, everyone had the same problem. Lena checked her banking app. Balances unavailable. After an hour on hold. System-wide issue. Please be patient, rent was due. Utilities, too. No forgiveness. The landlord shrugged. The power company added a late fee. The fridge held onions, rice, and the last milk. They had under $30 in cash. Suddenly, that drawer was their only bank. Part 1. Realizing it's over. News called it temporary disruption. Banks called it technical issues. Social media shouted theories, but none of it mattered when the store stopped taking cards. Shelves were thinning. They tried to stock up. The card failed. They paid with their last bills and left with a few heavy cans and a lot of worry. That night, Cole opened an old lockbox, documents, and a deed to 5 acres with a small hunting cabin. The someday project. "We need to go there," Lena said. "Not if we wait," Cole agreed. Part 2. Leaving. They listed what they needed: propane, water, matches, tools, seeds. The hardware store was crowded with the same idea. With their last cash, they bought a few supplies. A clerk tossed in 2 lighters. "Don't say I never helped." On the way out of town, they passed stranded families and cardboard signs. Food, F-U-E-L. At a checkpoint, 3 men in vests asked where they were going. "Family land, no money." One leaned in. "Stay off the main roads." "Take County 14. Gangs are hunting." Part 3. The Road. The countryside looked abandoned. Burned cars and ditches, open mailboxes, barns painted "Turn back," and nothing left here. At a river crossing, trucks blocked the bridge. "Food, fuel, or trade," the leader said. Lena pulled off her wedding ring. He weighed it and waved them through. They camped in a field with others. Before dawn, more trucks arrived. Protectors. And raided the camp for fuel and food. Screams in the dark. Cole and Lena handed over their keys and were ignored. At sunrise, the place was wrecked. They kept moving. Part 4. The Cabin. By noon, they reached the cabin. Small, crooked, dusty, but shelter. Inside, wood stove, table, 2 chairs, empty jars. The pump ran brown, then clear, relief. They cleaned, unpacked, made a bed from quilts, cooked beans and rice on a camp stove. Over weeks, Cole repaired boards. Lena found a spring. They planted a garden, set rain barrels, gathered wood. An older neighbor, Harlan, arrived with seeds and advice. Money's gone. Skills are currency. 2 teenagers stumbled in, fleeing an attack. They stayed for work, stacking wood, tending beds. Part 5. Trouble. 3 trucks arrived, polite men, rifles visible. "For the community, give what you've got, we'll keep you safe." "We don't have much," Cole said. 2 men advanced until neighbors appeared from the trees with axes, pipes, and shovels, silent, watching. The leader frowned. "Not worth it today." They left. No one cheered. Everyone understood they might return. Part 6. A New Life. Cole and Lena joined a small network, bartering honey, eggs, salt, taking turns on road watch, building signals for trouble. They learned to fix what broke, stretch meals, hide supplies, and trust slowly. Life stayed hard. Gangs roamed, food was short, but they finally had a chance. One night, a hand-crank radio voice said, "If you're hearing this, you're alive. Help your neighbors. Don't give up. We're still here," Lena whispered. For that night, it was enough. But people kept the memory like scar tissue. Gardens tended, tools sharp, watch kept. No one believed it was over. They believed they were ready, and that was enough. Absolutely. Here's Story 3, The Red Zones Extended Edition, about twice as long as before, with higher tension and scares, but still in a clear, simple, easy-to-listen style and tighter paragraphs for 11 labs. Story 3, The Red Zones Extended Edition. The first warning was 4 words: shelter in place immediately. No timeline, no context, just a city map turning shades of red. Cal and Mira ran a small repair shop for phones and laptops. That morning the line was out the door. At noon the line vanished. By evening, police tape covered their entrance. Non-essential, closed until safe. Rent and power bills still came. The world had changed, the bills had not. Part 1. Lockdown. The city carved itself into red zones. Streets with cases became blocks, blocks became districts. Checkpoints rose at bridges and highway ramps. A new agency appeared in gray uniforms with clipboards and rifles. Their vans said Public Safety Office. Their paperwork said Emergency Reallocation Act. In practice, if you had an empty bedroom, they took it for quarantine. If you had a truck, they took it for rapid response. If you had a store, they locked it for crowd mitigation. If you had supplies, they accounted and removed them for fair distribution. The sickness moved faster than the rules. It started like a hard flu. In some people, it shifted suddenly. They grew restless, then violent, swinging, biting, smashing, until fever knocked them flat. Officials called it Phase B. The news called it an acute behavioral event. Neighbors called it the reason they slept with furniture against the door. Sirens never stopped. Drones barked, "Remain indoors." Curfew, 8 p.m. The city learned to be empty. Part 2. The Knock. On the 4th night, 3 gray uniforms knocked just after curfew. One held a form, one a list, one a rifle. "Caleb Henry and Mira Ortiz, your second bedroom is requisitioned for isolation. A patient will arrive within the hour. Sign here for cooperation," Mira said. "We have my mother on oxygen in the back room. No protective gear, no training." The official offered to relocate her mother to a facility. "No," Mira said. From the back room, her mother coughed, thin and hollow. The official said, "Failure to comply is a Class C offense." Cal said, "Give us until dawn." The official marked his clipboard. Dawn. Cal and Mira didn't sleep. They packed. Tools, cans, water jugs, blankets, battery packs, prescriptions, the small inhaler that always worked. At 4 a.m., they drove back streets, avoided lighted checkpoints, crossed the old industrial bridge with rusted arches. No one stopped them. The city fell behind them like a door closing. Part 3. The Road Out. Outside the city, rules were looser and hunger was tighter. Gas stations accepted cash only. Half the pumps were bagged out of service. A masked clerk warned, "Stay off Route 7. They're barricading and relocating folks." He made tired quotation marks with his fingers and said the word like it tasted bad. At a hard gate, concrete blocks, floodlights, a mobile trailer, an official asked their purpose. "Medical," Mira said. pointing to the oxygen concentrator humming beside her sleeping mother. Show proof of ownership. Cal handed a copy of the deed to family land. Proceed, the official said. Mandatory registration at the north gate in 20 miles. If inside the quarantine ring, you'll be placed in a monitored sector. They smiled, thanked him, and when they were clear of lights, turned down a farm road marked No Outlet. A dirt track continued where the map ended. They followed the only road that wasn't telling them where to go. Part 4. The Place. The house was low and stubborn with a tin roof, a sagging porch, a row of pines that blocked the wind, and a key that had been in the same flower pot for 30 years. They opened windows, flushed the lines until the water ran cold and clear, found the old wood stove and a box of aged split logs, set the oxygen machine near a window outlet so no one tripped over cords. The inventory was short. 2 sacks of flour, 1 jar of salt, 1 dented pot, a silent radio that woke after a few slaps, a deck of cards with 3 queens. They ate rice and beans, slept in their clothes, and woke to a plan. Cell service was hit or miss. Most radio stations looped emergency alerts. One community band gave the local truth at sunset. Red zone expanded to County Line Road. Businesses closed. Public safety collecting surplus report Phase B incidents. Yellow zones stay put. Red zones shelter. Their road wasn't colored. That felt safer than red and more honest than yellow. Part 5. Phase B. Up close. A pickup rolled to their gate 3 days later. A woman about Cal's age got out and kept her distance. Rowan from a mile south. Her wraparound porch didn't wrap anymore. She came to warn them, 2 neighbors down with fever. One had tipped into Phase B, smashed every dish, then collapsed. The hotline said stay inside and wait. For what? Rowan asked. No answer. She traded eggs for salt and proposed a shared night watch. Wake others if a vehicle comes after dark. Answer road calls from cover and meet gray vans at the gate, never at the door. That night, wind moved through pines like slow breathing. Around 2 a.m., shouting echoed far off, then cut out. They waited in the dark and didn't sleep after. In the morning, Rowan came back shaking. The vans had registered each household, removed surplus, stuck orange stickers on doors, safe, needs check, quarantine, and took 3 people, including the Phase B man. Where? She asked. A medical facility. Where? North. Can we visit? When it's safe. She didn't feel safer. Part 6. House Rules. They wrote rules on cardboard and taped them to the pantry. Food first, plant, protect, stretch. Water always, pump daily, clean filter. Power carefully, generator for oxygen and quick charges only. Neighbors matter, trade fairly, share warnings, watch roads. Don't argue with rifles, move supplies before you need to. If sickness shows, separate, mask, clean, rest. Be kind, not foolish, help from cover, decide together. Cal turned the shed into a workshop. Mira turned the smallest bedroom into storage and care space. They coaxed the old tiller to life and planted potatoes, onions, and beans, then more beans. They joked about beans because jokes help. A week later, a gray van rolled to the gate. Public safety inventory. List your non-essential supplies for redistribution. Cal handed over an accurate, incomplete list. 3 soup cans, a spare blanket, 2 cracked phone screens. We'll need to look inside, the official said. High-risk patient on oxygen. No entry, Mira said. Rowan appeared with two neighbors at the bend, arms at their sides, empty-handed and not. The official exhaled, took the soup and the blanket, and left. No one mentioned beans. The beans were elsewhere. Part 7. The Bad Day. A car slid into the ditch by their drive and screamed its horn until Cal cut the wire. A young man inside burned with fever, eyes unfocused, a blue wristband on his wrist. Quarantine release. Numbers but no name. They kept him by the road, masked and gloved, gave him water and waited. He grabbed Cal's sleeve and choked. North Gate isn't a clinic. Holding wing. When it gets bad, they lock the doors. Don't go north. He slept the day and left at dusk, unsteady but alive, leaving his wristband hooked on the fence like a warning sign. That night a figure staggered and fell face first on Rowan's road. Phase B, raging, clawing, roaring, then collapsing into a terrible sleep. They rolled him on his side and kept their distance. At dawn he woke ashamed and blank. They gave water and directions to the church pavilion where volunteers kept cots. They didn't keep him, and they didn't send him away without a plan. That afternoon, gray vans took 2 farms tractors for regional use. People filmed until officials called phones misinformation devices. The words sounded rehearsed and tired. No one felt safer. Part 8. Making a real map. The official map became useless. They drew their own. Rowan sketched roads on butcher paper with a carpenter's pencil, marking good wells, bad wells, a green circle on a barn where the owner let travelers sleep if they left it better than they found it, and a red X at a house where a family vanished under the Reallocation Act. Cal wrote in radio frequencies that actually worked. Mira penciled generator hours and fuel ratios against oxygen needs. They posted one map in the shed and hid a copy under the porch. They set a trade table at the drive with a sign, "Take what you need, leave what you can." Some days it held nothing but hope. Some days there was jam, wire, or aspirin in a bag labeled 1 per day. The community radio grew useful. Washout at mile 5, detour through the orchard. Phase B near the mill, shelter until noon. Gray vans south in 2 truck teams, hide engines. There were still rumors, but fewer. Simple lives make simple speech. Part 9. The Corridor. A drone dropped a letter in a plastic sleeve. This area will become a controlled safety corridor. All private property within the corridor is under temporary state management. Registered residents will be relocated to approved shelters. Compliance ensures your safety. People met at the church pavilion and stood far apart. No speeches, no yelling. No one wanted a shelter. No one wanted a fight. They chose friction over war. Hide essentials, move machines into woods, split stores into caches, stall at the gate, not the door. Call neighbors when vans appear, no heroics, just delays everywhere. The vans arrived in 3s, loudspeakers repeating, "We are here for your safety." They sealed barns, tagged houses, asked for keys. Keys were lost, broken, or with a cousin who was away. It cost time. Time is also a resource. At Rowan's, they tried to take a tractor. She offered sandwiches. The youngest officer ate and didn't argue. The tractor stayed. At Cal and Mira's, the lead official rubbed his temple. "Corridor closes tomorrow. Last chance to come willingly. After that, we escort. We will be safe here," Mira said. 3 neighbors stood in daylight 20 yards back, empty-handed and not. The official wrote on his clipboard, Mark non-compliant, follow-up postponed on paper. The corridor closed the next day. On the ground it leaked around its edges. Maps leak when people don't. Part X. The Night of Windows. They learned the sound of bad nights. It wasn't sirens, it was abrupt quiet. The night of windows started with shattering glass down the valley, one pane, then another, then many at once like a rain of knives. Cal and Mira doused their lamps and listened to boots and hoarse voices carrying through the cold. A group swept houses, kicking in doors, grabbing anything easy to carry. "Open up! Safety check!" they shouted, laughing at the words. Cal and Mira stayed still in the dark and held each other's breath. A neighbor 2 houses down screamed, then a single gunshot, then a truck revved away. In the morning, Rowan and 2 others walked the road with blankets, boards, and nails. They helped an old man replace his window while he cried without sound. No one called a hotline. No one expected a response. The town held its own pieces together and memorized the sound of boots. Part 11. The Friend Who Wasn't. 2 weeks later, a familiar face drove up. Gio, a customer from the old shop. He'd always overpaid for quick repairs and brought coffee as thanks. He'd heard they made it to the country. He needed a place to land. He brought canned peaches and a working inverter. They fed him, laughed, and let him sleep in the shed. On the third night, Cal woke to whispering radio chatter behind the shed. 2 adult targets, 1 elderly, supplies likely. Confirmed beans. Cal watched Gio close the radio and tuck it into his coat. In the morning, Cal asked Gio to help split wood by the old stump. While Gio swung, Mira quietly called Rowan. When a gray pickup eased around the bend toward the gate, 3 neighbors stepped from the trees with the calm of people who'd seen enough. Gio lifted his hands and said it was a misunderstanding. The radio in his pocket crackled. Moving in. He swallowed. They took the radio and the truck keys and told him to keep walking. He did. The gray pickup turned around after seeing the neighbors' faces. That night, they buried the fear in a deeper hole and added a new rule. Trust is earned daily. Part 12. The Relocation Bus. In late autumn, a white bus crawled up the road escorted by 2 gray vans. Loudspeakers offered clean beds, hot meals, and medical evaluation. Doors opened and a line of veterans in yellow vests got out. Local men paid to assist. The lead officer asked for residents to approach for registration. No one moved. The officer walked to the old widow's porch and smiled kindly. "Ma'am, let us help you," she said. "By taking my house?" He kept smiling. "Just for the emergency." She pointed to the scar on her arm. "I've lived through emergencies." She shut the door. The bus idled for an hour. When it left, 3 kids followed, thinking of hot meals. Their mother ran after them and came back alone in the dark. After that day, people hid children when engines approached. Part 13. The Cold. Winter came with brittle edges. The generator ran 2 hours per night for oxygen and radio charges. Fuel was tight. Cal switched to a small DC pump to reduce draw. Mira covered windows in plastic and hung quilts like doors inside doors. They ate beans and potatoes. They traded for salt like it was gold. Rowan started bringing honey again. Her new bees were stubborn and mean, but alive. Phase B flares still hit, meaner in the cold. One night, a man ran barefoot down the road, smashing mailboxes with a fence post. He fell in a ditch and shook until he stopped. They put a blanket over him and waited. He woke with no memory and bruised palms. He cried when he saw the blanket. Everyone was more afraid of what they could become than of anyone else. Part 14. The Clinic. The facility north kept coming up over the radio, rumors, fragments. A pathfinder from 2 towns over had seen it, not a clinic. A warehouse with cubicles of cots, bright lights day and night, doors locked during Phase B outbreaks. Supplies were abundant, food, meds, diesel, but personal property was confiscated to prevent hoarding. A small group went to confirm. Cal argued to stay. Mira said someone had to know. Rowan went. 2 others joined her. They left at dusk and returned 2 nights later, wet and pale. The report was simple. Lots of food, no freedom. Compliance bought you a bed. Non-compliance got you the parking lot and a clipboard. They saw doors locked from the outside and a man beating his fists bloody on the glass while staff looked away. "We won't go," Rowan said. "Not unless the choice is between that and dying in a ditch. And maybe not even then." Part 15. The Raid. Late winter, a 5-truck team hit the valley at sunrise, uniforms matching, tactics practiced. They cut the church chain, rolled into the pavilion, and started cataloging the pantry. People arrived fast, standing back with their hands visible. "We will distribute fairly," the officer said. "Last time you did, the sick starved," a woman answered. 2 teenagers made the mistake of shouting. An officer shoved one into a table, the other rushed and got a rifle butt to the ribs. Cal stepped forward and raised both hands. "Stop," he said. "You're hurting kids." The officer looked around and saw the number of quiet faces, the number of open phones recording, the number of men who weren't backing up. He signaled his team to move the crates faster. They took half and left half. It wasn't victory. It was a line drawn that might hold. Part 16. The Fire on the Hill. A radio call cracked the night. "Fire at the Ridge Farm." Rowan's voice tight. Cal grabbed tools, Mira grabbed the med bag and oxygen mask. They ran. The old ridge house was a rim of orange against black. A boy was trapped on the porch roof, coughing through smoke. Cal climbed the rain barrel, then the porch railing, then the gutter, and hauled the kid down while Mira wet cloths and shoved them under door gaps to slow the draft. Someone cut power to the barn to kill sparks. The fire took the roof but spared the walls. In the ashes, they found a jar of matches clustered up like a bouquet. Someone had tossed them in through a broken window. "Safety patrol," Rowan said, staring at the jar. No one said the quiet part out loud. Part 17. The Second Corridor. In spring, the agency returned with a new name, new colors, same vans. A fresh map proposed a second corridor with community leadership councils and resource pooling. It sounded gentler. It wasn't. They sent liaison officers, friendly, conversational, good listeners, to gather head counts and inventory estimates. Mira answered politely and offered nothing new. Cal listened for code words: compliance, redistribution, safety. Meanwhile, the town formalized what already worked. A weekly barter at the pavilion, road watches logged by hour, a shared seed library, a quiet medic trained by a nurse who used to do school shots, a rule that Phase B patients get shade, water, and distance, not cages. The new corridor failed to take because there was nothing left to take easily and no one left who believed temporary. Part 18. The Long Scare. In early summer, Mira felt fever and an ache in her joints. Cal's hands shook as he counted her pulse. They separated rooms. He masked. He cleaned everything twice. Rowan dropped tea, onions, honey, and a paper note. "You are not alone." The radio whispered about a new variant with shorter Phase B windows and deeper crashes. For 3 days, Mira drifted. Sweats, chills, shallow sleep. On the 4th day, she woke clearer, grabbed Cal's wrist and said, "I'm here." She never flipped into Phase B. Cal cried over her shoulder where she couldn't see. Part 19. The Stranger with the Bag. A stranger with a red hiking pack appeared at the drive, hands up, eyes hollow. He said his name was Tal. He didn't ask for food, he asked for a message to be sent over the radio. "Tell Willow Creek that Tal is alive and I'm heading west." Mira asked, "Who's there?" He said, "People who didn't want to be moved." He showed a rolled schematic for a small hand-built wind turbine and a worn notebook with wiring diagrams. He fixed their radio hum by rerouting a ground and left a handful of resistors for Cal. He slept in the barn and left at dawn. No trade asked, only a piece of bread in his pocket. Sometimes fear arrives as a person, sometimes hope does too. Part 20. The Return of the Vans. One humid night, 2 vans crept without lights and stopped at the church. The team moved fast, cutting the pantry lock with a quiet grinder. Cal, Rowan, and 3 others watched from the berm where the road dipped. The thieves weren't gray uniforms, they wore gray as camouflage. They loaded crates into their own unmarked truck and rolled out. By morning, the town had a new signal. 3 short horn blasts meant neighbors stealing as officials. Trust got stricter. The town split stores across 5 hidden sheds and wrote fake inventory lists for anyone who asked. Part 21. The Hard Choice. A traveling family came through with a Phase B father strapped to a makeshift pallet. He growled at nothing. His eyes flashed between terror and rage. His little boy clung to his mother's coat. They begged for help. The council gathered. They could take the family in and risk a violent flare in the night, or turn them away and live with what that means. Mira said, "We take the mother and child. We keep the father under the oak shade and water, blankets and watch. If he breaks free, we run, not fight." They did exactly that. At dusk, he calmed. By midnight, he slept. By morning, he woke weak and weeping. The boy held his hand. No one slept that night. No one regretted it. Part 22. The Last Broadcast. The government channel returned stronger with a polished message. "Stability is coming. New supply chains active. Report to your nearest coordination hub for registration. Non-compliance will delay service." The council voted to ignore it. The PineNet voice answered later, "Do what your town decides. If you must register to trade safely, register a name that isn't yours. If a map disagrees with reality, use reality. If a uniform threatens your dinner, eat together." Part 23. After. Checkpoints went unmanned more often. The vans arrived less than rarely. The facilities kept operating, but fewer went willingly. Some towns joined coordination hubs and managed. Others stayed loose and local. Cal and Mira's place remained a dot in a patchwork. Gardens, tools, watch schedules, a repaired radio buzzing with weather and warnings, a porch with a sag that discouraged ambition. They never celebrated victory. They never declared anything over. They planted, fixed, taught, learned, and slept with one ear open. Part 24. What stayed? Mira said the scariest part wasn't the sickness or the men with rifles, it was how quickly rules changed and how fast people accepted it. What saved them wasn't guns or luck. It was neighbors, routines, small honest work, and refusing to hand over the keys to their lives because someone said safe. They kept the deed in the flower pot, the porch sagging just enough to look uninteresting, the map updated in blunt pencil, the trade table stocked when they could. When asked later what to do if it happens again, Mira said, "Start with water, then neighbors, then routines. Hide some beans, teach the kids, keep the radio warm." Cal added, "And when a map tells you to go somewhere you know is wrong, fold it up. Use your eyes." The city never officially ended the lockdown. It faded like a storm, uneven, leaving debris. Bills started again, timid at first, then confident. Some people went back to before. Some couldn't. Most did something in between. Cal and Mira didn't make speeches. They repaired what was in front of them, traded fare, checked the road at dusk, washed their hands and their tools, and told the truth in short sentences. They were still in the red zones if you looked at the old maps, off the map if you looked at the new. They were home if you stood on the porch and breathed without asking permission. That was enough, and if it wasn't, they would make it enough tomorrow.